everybody. Welcome back to my workshop and welcome back to my garage. This is video number 3 in my Pango Music Flying V kit that we've been building. And what we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to start the sanding, grain filling, and finish prep on the guitar. If you'll remember correctly, we got the neck glued in the last episode. What I need to do for part of my sanding is there's a little bit, you can just feel it right here in the heel, right where the neck and the body joint is. I want to make sure that's nice and smooth and transitions in well. I want to sand the surface to 320. Be doing that. After it's sanded to 320, I'm going to wet it and let it dry. And what that'll do is that'll raise the fibers back up and it'll let me sand it again to 320. That way it'll be nice and smooth. And then I'm going to use a water-based grain filler on this. I am going to be doing a solid color finish on it. I did decide that. So I've got the paint on the way. I'm going to hold that off until we actually get to it because I want that to kind of be a surprise on what it's going to be and what color I've decided to paint it. But thank you all very much for your comments on what color I should go with. This is a sponsored video by Pango Music. They did send me the kit, so thank you very much to them for sending me the kit. If you're looking to buy a kit, please let me know in the comments below. What I can do is I can reach out to Pango Music and let them know, and they can keep an eye out for your name when you're ordering your kit. That way they can apply a discount to your kit. Also, I just want to say thank you everybody that's been subscribing to the channel and that comes back to watch my videos. It does mean a lot to me that I can pass on a little bit of what I've been doing and maybe help somebody else down the road. So please, if you like what I'm doing, click like, click subscribe, follow along with my builds. What we're going to do now is we're going to start the sanding process on this body. I'm not going to show that entire process. It would be long, tedious, and very boring for you to sit there and watch me sand a guitar body. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you a little bit, then we'll move to the grain fill, and then once we get to the grain fill portion, I'll spend a little bit more time letting you know how I'm doing it with the grain fill with the water-based filler that I'm using. So let's get rolling. The biggest thing you got to worry about with finishing, it's all in the preparation work. Once you think you've got it sanded to the proper smoothness, sand it again. Just spend that little bit extra time going through there, making sure it's perfect. The same with the grain fill. Put the grain fill in. If you think you need some more, put some more in. Once you sand that smooth again and check it, make sure, and if you need to add a second or third coat of grain fill, do that. And some of the more open pore wood may require 2 to 3 coats of grain fill. So the area that I want to work on first is this area right here, right where the body and the neck meet together. And I just want to very carefully just come in here. And I'm being careful not to go into the neck. So what I'm using here is just I've got some 80 grit sandpaper and I've got this rubber eraser. So that's a little bit flexible, but it's also kind of a hard surface. And I've got it wrapped around, and that way I can just use this surface right here to kind of come down into this, and I'm just rounding it in. I want that to be a nice, smooth surface. I'm being very careful not to go too far, and because I don't want to hollow out and make a U into the neck right there. So what I want to do is just get that part right to where it's touching the neck. So just that little bit of work has really smoothed that piece in right there. Now just to do the same thing here on the other side. And one thing you can do is, don't worry, that's just my dog. That's just my dog protecting me. So what I've done here is I've just put a little bit of tape on the neck in the area that I don't want to sand. And that's going to help protect it as I sand the piece that I want. Because here there was just a little bit more of a ridge. And this is doing perfect. This is doing exactly what I wanted it to do. And you can see that tape's doing a great job of protecting the neck. I can tell I'm at the right spot on it because I just started to go through the tape. Let's peel this off and see what we got. Oh yeah, much nicer. There we go. That's got that nice and smooth now as well, to where it's got a nice blend in. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to switch to 180. I'm going to go ahead and sand the whole thing. After I do 180, I'll hit it with 220, and then I'll hit it with 320. All right, so what I have is I have my sandpaper on my orbital sander. I've got it hooked up the vacuum, so it's going to be a little bit noisy, but I'm just going to go ahead and hit the front and back surface and the sides as much as I can with the orbital, and then I'll do the rest by hand. Okay, so we have the entire guitar sanded up to 320. What I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna wet it. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna bring up any of the fibers. And I'm not used, as you can see, I'm just dampening the wood a little bit. You can see it gives that mahogany, that brings out that color in that mahogany a little bit too. Basically what this is doing is this is bringing up all the grain. The grain fibers that are still there and maybe loose, and those are expanding out now. I'm gonna let this dry overnight. Tomorrow I'll come back, I'll resand it down to 320, make sure it's nice and smooth again, and then we'll start the grain fill process. So after wetting it down yesterday, I let it dry overnight, and I've sanded it back to 320. So after I finished sanding it, what I did is I took compressed air and I blew it off as much as possible to get as much of the sawdust and stuff from the sanding out of the pores. And then I wiped it down with naphtha to clean it up. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start using the grain fill process. What I've got is just the water-based grain filler from Stumac, the clear. And what we'll do is we'll put that on. The way you're supposed to apply it is use a stiff bristled brush or a squeegee, go across the grain, work the grain filler down into the grain, and then squeegee off the excess. And then once the grain filler dries, it takes about 45 minutes for it to dry. Then you hit it with the light sand of 320, and then if necessary, apply another coat of grain filler. So it's important when you're pushing it in, you want to go against the grain. The same when you're squeegeeing it out. If you go with the grain with the brush, the bristles will actually dip down into that grain and pull that grain filler out. We're going to start with the back. So you just want to put it on there. And use that to put it on. Then I'm going to use the wider surface to squeegee it in. As you can see, this goes on pretty easy. You can see I'm going across the grain with it to really push this into the grain. I'm actually going to use the brush here for these roundovers. I'm going to go ahead and try and get the roundovers and the sides as well as I do this on this round. And this bit's going to take a little bit more because that's the end grain. It tends to soak up a little bit more. So I'm putting in some extra right there. And then I'll go back and clean that off in a minute. With the neck, it's kind of hard not to go with the grain sometimes when you're putting the grain fill in, because the neck is rounded, so you don't have as much area. You do have to go with it a little bit at times. But I'm trying to go across as much as possible. Take my burlap, now that it's dried a little bit, just to get the excess off. There we have the first coat of grain fill applied to the back of the guitar. Like I said, what I'll do now is I'll let this dry for about an hour. It says 45 minutes, and here in Arizona, that'd probably be that. So I'm going to let it dry for about an hour. Then I'll come back out. I'll hit this with 320, and then I'll put a second coat on. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll let that dry for about an hour. I'll come back out, hit it with some 320. All right, so we've got it all sanded back down. I can feel it. It's a lot smoother now as I run my hand over it. It's actually very smooth. But we are going to go ahead and just hit it with the second coat of grain fill, just to make sure that we have everything. This coat will go on much, much smoother and easier because I don't have to force it down into as many pores as I did before, as it's already filled. And one thing I want to do with this time is, because it is pretty much filled, I'm going to squeegee it a lot more. I am still working it into the wood as much as possible because I want it to get down in there and fill all the grain, because we're hoping to go with a high gloss finish on this. So that is the second coat of grain fill. So all the initial finish prep is done on the body. As you saw, I sanded it to 320. And then after that, I went and I wetted the surface. I sanded it to 320 again. And then I used 2 coats of grain filler. I used the Stumac clear water-based grain filler. And as you can see, but this is this really nice smooth surface now. All the grain is filled. We're pretty close to final finish prep. Still got a little bit more to do on it. What I'm going to do first is we're going to go through and I'm going to get all the tuners installed. I'm going to get the pick guard installed, Maybe the pickup rings, we'll take a look at that. But what I want to do is I want to get all the drilling done on the body before I start to apply the finish. That way when I'm done and I'm assembling the guitar, I don't have to worry about a lot of tools being around the guitar. So I always like to do kind of a mock setup before, get the holes drilled. That way everything's good to go. So what we're going to do right now though is we're going to go ahead and get our tuners on. Tuners on and the holes drilled in the headstock for the tuners. So this is a 3x3 headstock. So you do have to be aware of which way the tuners go in. I've went ahead and I've got my tuners sorted. I'm going to go ahead and put them in. I'm going to put one side in, get those lined up, drill the holes, and that way I have room to do the other side with putting the ruler down. Because when you go to put these top two tuners in right here, there's no space to get the ruler underneath it to measure to make sure you're straight. So I'm going to do the top first, or the base side first. So I'm just laying the tuners into the holes, as you can see. And then I'll just put this on the bushing in on the other side. Then what I'll do is I'll snug these down. Then I can align them to make sure they're lined up. Now what I can do is I can just take a straight edge, lay it across the bottom. There we go. Those tuners are straight in line with each other. There we go. Got a hole marked. So that's good. Go ahead and take these ones off now. There we go. There's those. And then the same thing, I'll lay the ruler across the bottom. There we go. Those are nice and straight. There we go. There's those marked. Another good reason for doing these now, especially the tuners, is because they do twist a little bit when you go to install them. So by doing this, that way any tooling marks that get put on my headstock now, I can sand back out. So what I'm going to do is I've got my tuner, and I got one of the screws that goes in it. That way I take into account the depth of the tuner. Then I just take my drill bit with a little bit of tape on it, and that way I can mark it. That way I know when the tape hits the surface of the wood that I'm through. All right, there's those holes drilled. And as you can see, we did not drill through the headstock, so that's perfect. I really wanted to get everything drilled on this. So what I did is I took another look at an alternate way that I could line my pickups up. And I'm going to show you what I did in order to do that. This way I can get all my holes drilled. So what I did is I dropped the pickups down into the locations. And then I just took my flat edge, my straight edge, and I lined it up with the nut slot and then kept the same distance going down the edge of the neck here, which is basically the route the string's going to run. And as you can see, that string's going to pass right over the pole pieces on my bridge and my neck pickups. And then to make sure that it was the same for the base side, again, I went and lined it up with the nut because the nut's already cut on this. It was pre-slotted, so that helps tremendously, and that's why I was able to do this. So I lined it up on the top E string, and I bring it down the side of the neck, keeping my distance all the way down from where the string spacing is going to be, and it comes right across the top of the pole pieces for the bridge side. So I was able to drill my pickup locations. So there we are, pickups are mounted. So what I can do now is lay my pick guard down in here. See, and as you can see, it lines up extremely well. So what I can do now is I can go ahead, now that I know my pickups are mounted, I can go ahead and drill my holes here. It's good when you can do all the drilling and test fitting first, because now all these screws are going to be pre-tapped, everything's going to go good. That way I know that when I go to install it, after I've got the finish on, it's going to be much easier. So there's going to be less chance of tool slipping and anything like that that would mar the finish of the guitar. Because right now, if a tool slipped and it scratched the surface, no big deal. A little bit of filler, a little bit of sanding, and I'd be ready to go. Whereas if I've got the finish on it, you know, then I'm talking about sanding lacquer and redoing and letting it recure. There we have it. That looks pretty damn good. That's going to wrap up this video. I just want to say thank you very much to everybody for stopping by the channel, for giving me the support that you've given me. It's allowing me to do more things. So thank you very much for that. If you haven't done so already, please click like, click subscribe, follow along with what I'm doing. I've got some interesting stuff coming up here in the very near future. It's guitar oriented, but it's not guitars. It's going to be some pedals, some pedal boards, some things like that I've got in the works. So thank you very much for stopping by the channel. Until next time, take care.